Hi everyone, this is Paul here for the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm doing the astrology report for the week commencing the 20th of March, about outlining some key aspects and transits taking place and giving an overview of what it all means. Before I do that, I just want to clarify, as I always do, that the astrology doesn't control our lives. It gives us a framework to help us understand what's unfolding around us. It helps us to identify what opportunities for growth are presented to us at this time, but from there it's up to us to actually take advantage of them, i.e. take action. And it's up to us to also take responsibility for the choices that we make, so that whenever things don't go according to plan, we use them as opportunities to grow rather than looking for excuses for why things haven't turned out. But as with anything, if we don't take action, if we don't take responsibility for our choices, we don't make the most of the opportunities presented to us. Now, in terms of the aspects this week, I'll begin with the moon as usual. She starts in Virgo, so this is a time for kind of looking at our physical, mental health, but also looking at the kind of work that we want to be focused on at the moment, and see what kind of change we can make in our environment to establish greater order and what will benefit our health the greatest. On Thursday, right in the early hours, the moon's going to enter Libra, and within a few minutes of the moon entering Libra, we'll be having the full moon in Libra as well. So moon in Libra is a time for seeking balance. It's about reconciliation, and it's also seeking harmony in our one-to-one dynamics and potentially building bridges through tact and diplomacy. On Saturday, the moon will move into Scorpio, so this would be a time for kind of working on illuminating our shadow desires or our shadow drives. It's about identifying what is our true motivation for doing things, but it's also seeing what beliefs or what hurts are we holding on to that we need to let go of in order to empower ourselves and break through victim mentality. And lastly, on Monday, the moon will move into Sagittarius. So this is a time for that emotional need to explore, to look at different philosophies, or go and experience a sense of adventure in terms of seeking out new experiences which challenge our underlying assumptions of life and keep our minds refreshed and renewed through not getting stuck in dogma, as it were. Now, the big change this week is the sun is entering Aries, so it's closing off one cycle and the start of a new one. So the sun enters Aries late on Wednesday, so most of the day will be dominated by the sun in Pisces. This will be the last vestiges of wrapping up the old before, as the sun moves into Aries, it's time for setting new beginnings, and it's developing Aryan traits, so things like courage, of assertiveness, of enthusiasm, and that motivation to get going. This is also a time where we may feel that drive to take action, to take the necessary steps needed to set goals going. So ideally, with the sun in Pisces, we've been looking at what vision do we want to create in our lives. But now with the sun in Aries, it's time to stop dreaming, start doing. So what do we want to be creating in our lives? What new beginnings or what seeds do we want to make sure are planted in the ground, and making sure we take the necessary steps to nurture them, so taking the actions needed to help them sprout and germinate. And it's also seeing what goals do manifest and which ones don't, as it were. But I'll do another video on this in much more detail. This is just the weekly report. So as I mentioned earlier, we'll have a powerful full moon on Thursday in the early hours. So not long after the sun's entered Aries, the moon sweeps into Libra, and we get the first of two full moons in Libra, the last one being around later on in April. But this one is about seeking that balance, recognising the need to have balance between self and other. It's about also recognising that as much as it's important to take action and pursue our own goals, if we can have the wisdom of looking at the broader picture and how it interacts with other people, as it were, we can then seek to work with other people along similar lines. So it's putting aside pure selfishness and recognising where can we achieve more working together than going solo with it. So this particular full moon is also aspecting the likes of Uranus, it's aspecting Mars, and it's also going to be in close proximity to Chiron. So as usual, there will be another video on this in more detail, but this particular full moon, it highlights both the wounds to the south due to the close proximity of Chiron, and with Mars being the rule of the sun that the sun is in, it's a time for looking at what actions need to be taken, but also look at the bigger picture, look at the impacts they have on other people, and assess the course of action that will best allow us to pursue our goals, but will also allow us to build bridges within the community. So it's looking at seeing where teamwork and cooperation will work better than just doing things solo. Now, in terms of the other aspects, we have Mars on Wednesday itself. Mars is going to be in exact trine to Pluto. So Pluto in essence is the higher octave of Mars. It's the higher functioning, so it's what Mars ideally needs to move towards in order for it to manifest at its highest. So Mars is about willpower, it's about action, it's about desire. Pluto is our motivations, it's the truth or true motivations for doing things. And Pluto is about bringing to the surface the shadow tendencies and the shadow desires that are actually running the show. And the key here is to transform the actions and desires function within the psyche, to make sure that the actions and desires are guided towards a goal that is based on self-empowerment, but also the empowerment of other people. So it's making sure that whatever course of action we're taking is not done at the expense of other people. So it's about moving desire beyond selfishness to looking at the broader picture. So what kind of actions would both empower ourselves and allow us to develop greater freedom within our own lives, but also help the people around us by recognising the fact that we're all interconnected. Everything that we do has a ripple effect on other people. Do we want to have that ripple effect coming back to us as karma that's shooting us in the foot, or do we want it to come back through greater empowerment, through aligning with the natural laws? Because Pluto's in Capricorn, it's showing us the truth of what happens when we try to do things outside of the natural alignment or outside of spiritual law. We end up creating karma for ourselves, and even if we become successful initially, we get a whole host of unwanted side effects which hit us from a different direction that we weren't anticipating, because we're so focused on ourselves. We didn't look at the broader picture and recognise the potential implications of certain courses of action that weren't guided by wisdom. On Friday, the sun will be in an exact conjunction with Chiron. So with this being in Aries, it's coming to recognise where there's a wound to the sense of self. So it's paying close attention to what words we say after the words I am. Do they empower us, or do they cause us to continue to play small, and we end up trying to do things through get approval, or we may even fear doing things out of worrying about visibility. So we may want to be successful, but we fear the visibility that can come from it. So it's understanding that we have to transform that inner script and that sense of self to make sure that it's not based on wounds, it's based on a sense of who we really are, and loving ourselves enough to take the actions in spite of the fears. Then we also have later on Sunday, Mercury is going to be exactly conjunct Neptune. So Mercury, we had a conjunction with Neptune back on around about the 19th of February. This is the second one because Mercury's doing a triple pass over Neptune as a result of the retrograde. So Mercury's backtracking over Neptune. So in the process, it's maybe time where we're looking at re-evaluating the dreams or ideas that we thought we wanted to set, and making sure that we weren't overlooking we weren't overlooking a key part of the vision that seems to be missing from our current plan of action. So it's a time for dissolving any mental constructs that could potentially get in the way of our plans. There's also seeking a mental understanding of how everything is interconnected, understanding that not everything can be determined by logic, or not everything conforms to human logic. Sometimes the path we need to take, or the course of action we need to take, seems counterintuitive, but it's more that, or rather, it seems kind of illogical, but it's actually the right course of action because it's guided by wisdom and a higher understanding, rather than just trying to do things like my way or the highway. It's choosing the right course of action and the right perspective to see how we can best achieve our goals going forwards. Lastly, on Tuesday, Venus is going to be entering Pisces. So with Venus in Pisces, what we're looking at is time for kind of, in terms of relationships, may desire a sense of oneness and sense of unity consciousness within it. It's also valuing that like unconditional love and compassion. So whereas in Aquarius it's more about freedom and it's about honouring the uniqueness of one another, in Pisces it's about developing spiritual love. It's about that love without boundaries. Now, understand when I say this, all I'm saying is that it's unconditional love, so it's without attachments. Boundaries are still important in terms of loving people, in order to make it clear that, because it's not loving to enable someone to get away with damaging behaviours, but it doesn't mean that we withhold love. It just means that we love without attachment. Sometimes that may mean we have to step away from the situation and not waste our time and energy on someone if they're not prepared to make a change of action. So sometimes it's stepping away from it that serves as the consequence for the other person to recognise that actually what they're doing isn't acceptable and they're not just going to get away with it. So it's having that unconditional love, that spiritual love, but as always, we have to build it on the inside first. So this is a time to kind of go inwards, to develop those reserves of spiritual love and love ourselves to the point where we're overflowing with it. So it's not just a well, it's a river of love pouring out of us. This energy then can spread outwards away from us, and the people in our immediate vicinity automatically benefit just by this spiritual love flowing from us. But it's not a case of interfering with other people's lives, it's embodying that spiritual love so it flows into the rest of our lives and helps the people around us who want to do it. And if people are scared of it or don't want to embrace it, we then love them enough to let them go, so we don't try to hold on to something that isn't going to work. So hopefully you should go for the week. The main thing to remember this week is that this is a time for taking action. It's a time for the new beginnings as the sun enters Aries. It's a time to have the courage to overcome or face any fears that stand in the way of taking action, and take action in spite of it. Because courage is not the absence of fear, it's the willingness to take action in the face of it, and learning to calm the mind enough that we recognise the right course of action and we take it no matter what fears, no matter what doubts inevitably come up. Because Aries is all about taking those initial steps to make things happen without knowing what the long-term manifestation will ultimately be. It's having that courage to take action without having all the facts, also recognising when to course correct, and having that assertiveness to maintain our own autonomy, to maintain our own personal freedom. But this doesn't mean that we do it at the expense of other people, so there needs to be a degree of respect as well. But this is a time for taking action, staying true to oneself, and it's also making sure that we engage people with assertiveness, not aggression and anger. So it's learning to take away the energy of anger, so it just becomes pure creative energy, and utilise that to assert ourselves in a calm and loving way without resorting to any kind of anger or any resentment, as it were. So one of the key wisdoms we may need to be looking at in the next month is choosing our battles wisely. It's picking the ones that are ideal and not picking pointless battles that create tensions within our relationships and push people away, which is obviously another theme of the full moon. It's reminding us to acknowledge other people, acknowledge that other people also have their own needs, so don't do things out of pure impulsiveness. have that wisdom to look at the bigger picture and make sure that what we're doing is guided by wisdom. So may this coming week bring you much change and much transformation and opportunities to set new beginnings and plant those seeds in the ground so they have a chance of sprouting, because it's through doing that we give ourselves a chance of maximising our growth in this next astrological cycle, so that by the end of it, so a year from now, we've become a different person, much more empowered and much more self-aware. So may this week bring you many insights, many blessings. Take care and be blessed.